Hey guys, welcome back to the Friday Vlog, where we discuss activity that goes on here with the BuzWeaver channel. That includes things like current events, headlines that are in the news, pop culture, social media, technology, and items of interest that come up during the week that allow us to have a little bit of a dialogue. If this is your first time here to the channel, welcome. If you are a returning visitor, a subscriber here on YouTube, or a follower on Alternative Tech, I want to thank all of you guys for your continued support.
From Fox 5 here in Atlanta, DC medical examiner says Capitol officer's death in January 6th riot was not homicide. If you guys follow Tim Pool, you might find it interesting that when you look up the single term riot in Google, you will find many articles relating to the Capitol Hill riot, as it's been described. And if you want to look up the riots that we have been talking about for over a year, you would have to look those up as peaceful protest or peaceful protesters, or now the new term for them is marchers. So they're constantly changing the narrative and verbiage. Washington, the DC Medical Examiner's Office has released its findings regarding the cause of death of Capitol Police Officer Brian Sicknick. According to the Medical Examiner's Office, Sicknick's death was natural and that he suffered a stroke. Very unfortunate. And CNN and the New York Times have not made any changes to their original articles or their broadcast, because we later learned that the officer that was hit with a fire extinguisher was an officer wearing a helmet, and he did not sustain any injuries or any life-threatening injuries from that attack. And another interesting facet to all of this was the other day, of course, as things were happening in Minnesota and or Minneapolis, particularly in the Brooklyn Center area, with the Derek Chauvin trial that we talked about earlier this week. BLM protesters rallied for victim leave after learning he was white. So, Black Lives Matter protests in Minnesota dropped to a knee and set off to march over a fatal police shooting, only to return when they learned it was a white carjacker who had fired at police, according to reports. So I say this more as detailed information than me trying to be sarcastic or cynical, which I can often be. But the point of this article was to demonstrate and to illustrate with clarity, that there is a narrative being driven. And we talked about the interview that was being done by the chief of police there in Minnesota, or in the Brooklyn Center area, when he mentioned that he was there in the front lines of the riot, and then the media in real time were trying to correct him and saying, it's not a riot. It's not a riot. Stop saying riot. Of course, we've already talked about all that. So you guys may be wondering, well, what started all of this? What is the contributing factor to all of this activity that we're seeing today, or more specifically, what has reignited, what has restarted in recent months, at least since the surrogate Joe Biden has been put in place? Well, we have to really go back to 2012, or in this particular White House briefing, July 19th, 2013, when President Obama said, when Trayvon Martin was first shot, I said that this could have been my son. Another way of saying this is Trayvon Martin could have been me 35 years ago. And we all know the importance and the significance of the president giving anyone information as being pivotal and important. And of course, it is the office of the presidency, which has influence and authority, which is another reason why the left and the media hated President Trump so much, is because he was in a position of authority and a position of influence, because what presidents say have an impact in society and across the world. So here we see, and we're seeing Biden do the same thing. And it's equally as dangerous to say things like this, because it obviously has many different interpretations, implications, and suggestions to it that can be used by special interest groups and the media in particular. And if we look here from CNN, Trayvon Martin's death sparked a movement that lives on 5 years later. Now, this was in 2017, and as I mentioned, the actual incident took place in 2012. And if we go down here An African-American teenager's death at the hands of a neighborhood watch volunteer spurred a movement and gave rise to a rallying cry that resonates with many today and resonates even till today. And that is Black Lives Matter. And we can confirm part of this as we look here from the National Review. It's a straight line from Biden to BLM. In other words, it's a straight line from the Obama administration when Biden was there because, of course, Biden was selected as the surrogate for the establishment because he had the scent of Obama on him. We see here an unmistakable correlation between the radical left's extraordinary violence and the sudden tightening of polls has stirred the Democrats' incessant standard bearer to bolt the basement. He'd hoped to wait another week or so before emerging to read short speeches about President Trump's erratic handling of C-19, the government's missteps during the Obama-era swine flu pandemic having apparently slipped Biden's mind. Well, I would have to argue that it wasn't simply just the C-19 that slipped Biden's mind, because lots of things have slipped his mind. But I did find it kind of interesting because this incessant standard bearer is just fancy speak for old man who apparently suffers from a cognitive disability. And I say that as someone who reads directly from articles and screws up certain words from time to time. But nonetheless, you guys clearly understand what I mean by how this is carrying on of the BLM narrative message. And you may have noticed that it seems like every Friday, which is the slowest news day of the week, there is some unfortunate or tragic incident involving the police and or a police shooting. And we're just seeing it more often than not because, of course, we no longer have Orange Man Bad. Now we have Police Blue Line, Police Lives Matter Bad, I suppose one could say. And I say that from the point of a description or for understanding. And you guys have heard me mention this quite often, but I've never really actually showed you the article. So here I have it from The Atlantic. Stay alive, Joe Biden. Democrats need little from the frontrunner beyond his corporeal presence. Think about that. We've already seen the media admit to the behaviors and the coordinated efforts that they put on to go against President Trump. In other words, a cabal as described by Molly Ball that we talk about quite often from the Time Magazine article, where she describes a cabal of people working together to fortify an election for a desired outcome. So here we see more of this. Now this, granted, this was on March 24, 2020, months ahead of the elections. But you can already see how all this was starting to unfold, how these groups were working together to ensure that President Trump was certainly not going to win because they had to continually speak out negatively against him. And we've seen this time and time again. So this week, as it continues, like I said, this video will be released on Friday. I'm recording this on Wednesday, April the 21st. So, of course, last night we heard about another shooting. Ohio police officer shot and killed a black teenage girl holding a knife. Police say, and body cam video shows. And I'm going to play a little bit of this for you so you guys can see how quickly these things escalate and happen in real time.
Hey. What's going on? Hey, what's going on? Hey, get down!
Okay, and that's how fast these things happen. And from tweets that I'm seeing and people discussing all this from the comforts of their home, from the comforts of wherever they are using their cell phones most likely, or their tablets or their PCs or their laptops or computers, it's easy to sit in, safety and comfort and analyze and dissect these things. It's another when these things are happening in real time. It's very difficult. It's very challenging to make these sorts of decisions. I have seen as absurd of posts saying, well, the police should have shot her in the leg. Shot her in the leg and what, hit her femoral artery and bleed out? These people watch too many movies, watch too many television shows, and he's not a marksman. This is the other thing, too. They want to limit, magazine capacities for people defending their home. The reason people have ARs in their homes or large magazine rifles is to give themselves a tactical advantage. It isn't about it's not an ego thing. It's about having tactical advantage. You want to be able to properly, adequately give yourself an opportunity to defend yourself from an assailant or several assailants. And if you only have 10 rounds in your pistol or 10 rounds in a handgun, which is also a semi-automatic, by the way, you may not have the luxury of being able to be a precision specialist marksman. And even a precision specialist marksman is going to act in a certain way under pressure, under duress. And these people simply do not understand this. And here we have another situation where a police officer had to make a very troubling and fatal decision immediately, because you can see here in this video, she's going directly for this girl to stab and cut her. And you saw how volatile the situation was, how quickly everything was happening in real time. It's very fast. He had to make a split-second decision. So we'll keep an eye on this and see how it progresses. But I hope this kind of gives you guys a little bit more of an understanding of where we're moving towards, how this has become a media narrative, how this has become a narrative for the Biden administration to focus again on police. And it's really troubling because the police, emergency services, the fire department are part of our community. They are part of what we rely on as a people in our society. And if the media continues to portray police officers as out there hunting people down, and I get this all the time from my friends on the left, how is it that conservatives and the right and Republicans can endorse or encourage the police to go out and hunt people? That's an absolutely cynical, exaggerated, and absurd argument out of their own anger, out of their own knee-jerk reaction. To think that police officers are intentionally and willfully just out there to harm people or kill them according to, or the way they describe it, which I think is exaggerated and ridiculous. And some of the things that Maxine Waters is saying, some of the things that has come out since the Chauvin trial are disturbing and troubling. And it's just a terrible situation. But as I mentioned, guys, this is a narrative, apparently, that the Biden administration and the media is now pushing. This replaces the Orange Man Bad and goes back to the era of the Obama administration, where, sadly, the police are now a target. The people of public trust. The public trust is such an imperative and important aspect to our community, an important part of our society. Imagine the anxiety and the apprehension that this creates when the media is portraying the police, the people that we as the public have to trust our lives with in many instances, as having doubts and uncertainty and fear because the media and the administration is portraying them as some sort of mafia hitman killers.
All right, guys, so that's going to wrap it up for this Friday vlog. Thank you so much for the likes, the shares, and the comments, and all the activity on the earlier videos this week on the breaking news reports that we had. And of course, below this video are the various links to the various social media platforms that I belong to, so make sure you avail yourselves to them, because I post things like Buzz Picks of the Day, which are movies and TV shows that I enjoy and that maybe you would enjoy as well. So avail yourselves of those links, as well as a subscribe link that I have now included for you guys that are on various other platforms. And of course, here on YouTube, that would be the channel icon appearing right there on the screen to subscribe, along with notifications. That way you guys will know when there's content here on the channel, as well as the Friday vlog. So thank you guys for your continued support, and I will see you, all of you right there behind that camera, next week.